Dear friends and colleagues, my name is Muhammad Shiraz. I am also known as Shiraz Paracha. I am a British Pakistani currently working at Abdul Wali Khan University, Mardan in Pakistan as a senior manager. Before joining the world of academia 15 years ago, I was a journalist and I worked for various news organizations in the United Kingdom, in Pakistan and also in Afghanistan. I somehow specialize on Afghan affairs because I covered the Afghan issue from 1987 to 2007 as a journalist, and then later on as a professor of journalism and commentator. I contributed on discussing, on talking, on teaching about the situation in Afghanistan, and I still contribute in form of articles and television commentaries on the situation in Afghanistan. Today I have decided to do this vlog with a different purpose and to share with you an idea where then once I will put this forward, friends and colleagues can give their feedback and their own thoughts, because I may be presenting it in a very crude way, in a very basic idea, and later on we can further fine-tune it, polish it if people think it is something we should be doing. We all know what has happened in Kabul last week. The Taliban have taken over Kabul again. They are controlling most parts of the Afghanistan, apart from one province, Panjshir in the north. This is the second time the Taliban have taken control of Kabul. The US-backed government just vanished. The Afghan army did not fight, and the Taliban took control of Afghanistan very smoothly, swiftly. I don't want to go into details why it happened, how it happened, because many other colleagues, analysts are writing about it, talking about it. There's a lot of discussion and debate going on this issue, on this matter. Today I will focus only on providing some insights into the Taliban phenomena. For example, who are the Taliban, what is their ideology, what is their lifestyle, what is their mindset, how they behave, and is there a way we can connect with the Taliban? Is there a way we can try to bring them into mainstream? And I believe there is a way, and that is what I plan to share with you. But let me start with the Taliban. Taliban is a word meaning, in English it means students. So this is a loose alliance of young students who studied at various religious schools in Pakistan and Afghanistan. They are influenced by Deobandi school of thought. Deoband is a small town in India. In 1866, Muslim clergy established a school there in Deoband. The purpose was to prepare, to train, to educate Muslims to resist the British colonial government, because British had suppressed a mutiny staged by the Indian, Muslim and Hindu and Sikh soldiers in 1857, and at that time those soldiers were working for the East India Company, and the East India Company brutally suppressed the mutiny, and after that the British government formally took control of India as its colony. This resulted into deep resentment, anger and disappointment, especially amongst the Muslim, and Muslim clergy of that time wanted to revive the Mughal Empire which preceded the British. rule. Therefore, they established this school with a purpose to prepare people for the revival of the Mughal Empire or Muslim Empire, because they thought they had the right to rule India, because they had been ruling India for 1000 years. So in 1866, Deoband school was established. It was influenced, it was established in line with the teaching of Hanafi Islam. Hanafi Islam was founded by Imam Abu Hanifa, a jurist, a philosopher of in the 8th century Kufa in Baghdad, in Iraq, and he provided interpretations and explanations on Islamic judicial system, social system, code of ethics, and so on. He was a reformist. Imam Abu Hanifa was a great reformist of his time. He stood up against the rulers and presented his point of view. He was put into prison and he died there, but his teaching spread fast, and today millions of people follow Hanafi Islam, and the dominant school of thought in the Indian subcontinent, Afghanistan and Central Asia is Hanafi Islam. So the Taliban are followers of Hanafi Islam, and they also because Deoband school, Deoband Madrasa was following it, and from 1866 till date, Deoband Madrasa in India is following the same line. In this Islam, the focus, this shade of Islam, this color of Islam, focus is on appearance, on performing rituals. It's very ultra conservative, rigid, inward looking, and it somehow wants to revive the past, let's say in the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th century Islam. It's kind of staying there. It's kind of stagnant there, and the Deobandis, including the Taliban, want to bring back that system, and even today they practice the same rituals in the same style, and they follow the same texts. And teaching and learning at Deoband is based on principles of Hanafi Islam and from early Muslim centuries. A Muslim clergy are scholars who established the Deoband school because they were anti-English, because they were anti-British. So they rejected everything that came with British or from British that included English language. So teaching and learning language at Deoband school was, madrasa was Persian, Arabic and Urdu. Persian was official language of the Mughal Empire, and Arabic was language of religion, and Urdu was a combination of Persian, Turkish, Arabic and Hindi. So that was a local language that developed in India, and now it's spoken and written. It's a proper language in India and Pakistan. It's national language of Pakistan. From Deoband, hundreds and thousands of scholars got their degrees, and they then went to different parts of India, came to parts of Pakistan, which was then part of India, and they established further schools, and then later on they also established schools in Afghanistan. A political party, a very old political party of India, Jamiyat-e-Ulama Islam, also emerged from Deoband school, and it was affiliated with Deobandi school of thought. That party was established in India, and it struggled for the freedom of India from the Brits, from Britain. And then later on, Jamiyat-e-Ulama Islam joined hands with All India Congress, and together they fought against the British rulers, British masters. Muslims also formed another party, All India Muslim League, in the early 20th century. All India Muslim League wanted a separate homeland for Muslims in form of Pakistan, which they achieved in 1947. But Jamiat-e-Ulama-e-Islam did not join All India Muslim League. It was in collation, in partnership with All India Congress. After the partition of India into Pakistan and India, Jamiat-e-Ulama-e-Islam was also divided into two. One part was left in India, it's still there, and the other was established in Pakistan. But they still followed Deoband school of thought, and they still considered Deoband as their spiritual headquarter. So the Taliban are associated and closely related with the Deoband school of thought and Jamiat-e-Ulama-e-Islam. They studied at these religious schools in Pakistan and also in Afghanistan and along the Afghan-Pakistan border. And they emerged as a response to the civil war in Afghanistan. In 1980s, as you know, the Soviet Union came into Afghanistan, and when due to the Soviet presence, a jihad was launched against the Soviet presence in Afghanistan, and it was sponsored by the United States, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Pakistan, and other Western allies. It was a militant struggle, guerrilla war against the Soviet troops in Afghanistan. It started in 1981 and continued till 1989 when the Soviets left Afghanistan. Those who were fighting the Soviets were jihadis, were mujahideen. They were different than the Taliban. Some of them were Deobandis, some of them followed Deobandi school of thought, but they were different. They had an international agenda. They wanted to bring Islamic revolutions not only in Afghanistan but across the world. They were trained by CIA and Pakistani and Saudi intelligence agencies. They were warriors, and they fought the Soviets. And once the Soviets left, and in 1992 the Soviet-backed Afghan government collapsed in April 1992, these mujahideens and jihadis entered in Kabul. But instead of forming a unity government, they started fighting each other, and this civil war was devastating for Afghanistan, which was already ruined by the 10-year-long war between the Soviets and the Mujahideens. When Mujahideens started fighting inside Afghanistan and for the control of Kabul, it caused too much harm and damage to the country. People were really, they were very, very desperate, devastated, and they were looking for peace. And this was the background in which in 1994 Taliban emerged from Kandahar. It is said that Pakistan was behind the formation of the Taliban. I was a journalist then in Pakistan, and I can confirm, yes, Pakistan played a role in the establishment of the Taliban, who moved from the Pakistan area to Afghanistan, and then from Kandahar they went into other parts of Afghanistan, and they controlled they got control of much of Afghanistan without any fight, as they did this time, because people were looking for someone for peace. They were sick and tired of war. So when the Taliban with their white flags moved into Afghanistan and started moving to Kabul, people welcomed them. But when they reached outskirts of Kabul, they had resistance, and there were resistance in other part. But eventually the Taliban took control of Kabul in September 1996. But the true face, the real face of Taliban came after they formed their government in Afghanistan. I mean, the word became familiar, and they were shocked and horrified to see what Taliban were doing in Afghanistan. While Taliban thought they were doing the right thing, this is what they believed in. They believed in, people should be dressed in a particular way, in a certain way. They follow a strict code of conduct. They want people to follow, a certain way of living, lifestyle, and perform rituals in a certain way. They are very inward looking. They are very ultra conservative, extremely narrow in their worldview. They are very simple in many ways. They look at things in black and white. So when they took control of Kabul in 1996, they enforced their brand of Islam, their brand of Islamic interpretations and Islamic laws. So their attitude towards women, their attitude towards minorities, or those who disagreed with them, was heavily criticized. I was one of the harsh critics of the Taliban rule, their strategies, and what they were doing in Afghanistan. Only 3 countries recognized the Taliban government, the then Taliban government. And also then Taliban harbored Osama bin Laden. They provided him shelter in Afghanistan. But when 9/11 happened and the US accused Osama bin Laden for the atrocity, 9/11 atrocity, and demanded the Taliban to hand over bin Laden to them, the Taliban refused. The Taliban refused not because they 100% agreed with bin Laden. They were part of bin Laden's international plans. They refused because Taliban, as I said, they are very keen, very particular about a certain way of behavior, certain code of conduct, and they are Pashtuns, so they also follow Pashtun code of honor. And in Pashtun code of honor, one has to protect his or her enemy, or his or her guest. And you don't hand over your guest to your enemy. So following that code of honor, they refused to hand over bin Laden to the Americans, and Americans attacked Afghanistan, and the Taliban government was removed. 20 years, the United States and NATO stayed in Afghanistan. US says it's not involved in nation building, but it was. A democratic Afghanistan was established. But after 20 years, what we see that government and its military, they all are just gone, and Taliban are back again. Now, this time the Taliban say they are different. They claim they want to have an inclusive government. They claim that they have learned from their mistakes. They want to establish relationships, positive, healthy relationships with the rest of the world. They want to do business. They want to do trade. They need seek recognition. We will see if they will fulfill their promises and how real their promises. We will see. We are interested in concrete results. And as I speak, I am 50 kilometers from the Pak-Afghan border, and I can see the influence and effects of Afghan situation inside Pakistan here. People have concerns, they have fears, though there are some people who are happy by what happened in Afghanistan, and they say they want to have same system in Pakistan, which is highly unlikely because Pakistan has quite developed political system, institutions, democratic institutions, and a mature, populace as compared to politically. But the Afghan situation, everybody is watching, and Taliban are now engaged in talks with the other stakeholders. This is different than what they did in 1996. They want to bring various, groups into government, and talks are going on. So this is the background I wanted to provide you very quickly. And now I'm moving to the next point, which is the real purpose of my today's talk. Let's hope that Taliban are successful in forming an inclusive government, inclusive government in Afghanistan, and they will have other stakeholders. They will be more tolerant. They will establish relations with the neighboring countries and also with the rest of the world. They will not impose by force their way of life, their way of thinking upon others inside Afghanistan and also outside Afghanistan. They will not harbor extremists or militants who pose threat to other countries, and whatever promises they are making. This is a very fluid situation. It can change, and even if peace comes to Afghanistan now, it's not I fear it will not be long lasting. We will see more turmoil in Afghanistan before things get better. But what I am I want to say today is that we should think long term. I'm looking at long term, and after studying the Taliban and the situation in Afghanistan and general condition of the people, young people in this part of the world, I think they deserve a better chance. I think they deserve something, to build their future, to build their career, to build their lives. And one way to do that and to give them the opportunity is through education. So if stability comes to, some form of stability comes to Afghanistan, my wish is, my desire is that the international community, international organizations such as the UNESCO, the European Union, European Commission, Western governments, Russia, China, Middle Eastern, Muslim governments, they all should, under the, some platform, under a framework, should sit together and look for ways how we can help Afghans and the Taliban to move forward and to become part of the mainstream of the modern world. One part of that could be if we are able to work with these religious schools across Afghanistan and Pakistan and also in India, by building linkages, by connecting these religious schools with other sister organizations across the world, particularly in Muslim world, but also beyond, in Western countries, with universities, with think tanks. Perhaps we can think of developing specially designed programs for these religious schools. Most of the Taliban are young people. They are in their teens, 20s and 30s. They have a long life ahead of them. They have only studied at these religious schools, which follow a very centuries old curricula and text and teaching and learning techniques. I think if outside stakeholders and partners approach the new Afghan government, where Taliban will be the part of that government and they might have a dominant role there, and offer them cooperation and collaboration which they don't feel like don't see as a threat to their values and their systems and their way of life. For example, Taliban and young people in these religious schools need a lot of new skills, vocational skills, trainings. They need scientific knowledge, education, education in medical science, in engineering, in IT, in environmental studies, and so on and so forth, in social sciences. They need these kind of trainings. So through if such a framework is developed where foreign professors and scholars visit religious schools here in Pakistan and jointly help and assist these schools to modernize their teaching and learning strategies and techniques, develop joint programs, new courses. International organizations and funding bodies can help establish modern laboratories, libraries. They can provide equipment, technical facilities to these religious institutions. They can integrate them into international education, systems. And more importantly, if we are able to develop mobility programs under which these young people from Afghanistan have the opportunity, madrasa students and otherwise, and also from Pakistan, to go to foreign countries, initially to Muslim countries, let's say to start with Turkey, Egypt, Malaysia, Indonesia, at universities under these specially designed mobility programs, and they study there for a semester or two and meet with other people of their age, interact with them, learn new skills, hear new ideas. It will broaden their vision, their understanding. They will learn how to live with people of different cultures, different faiths, different genders, different cultural backgrounds. And there are many institutions in Europe, in Germany, in Britain, offering special courses and programs, and there are departments of Islamic studies, a huge Muslim population in Europe, in Britain, in Germany, in France. We can have joint exchange programs with them. So when these young people will have these, they are very energetic. The Taliban, the young Taliban are very energetic. When we will engage them in these activities, and the purpose is that they come back and contribute towards the development of Afghanistan, towards the moving forward of Afghanistan, and helping the Afghan government, the Taliban government, I think it will have a great impact. It's a very sensitive task. It's not an easy one. It can be quite complex, especially keeping in mind the Taliban mindset. They're rigid, even though they say this time they are flexible and they are more tolerant, but still what I am suggesting is going to be a huge task, but it's not impossible. And let me share with you my own experience. In 2018-19, I was in Kazakhstan, and I was vice rector at a Kazakh university, and vice rector for internationalization, and I developed a proposal which I shared with the Afghan embassy in Kazakhstan. And then I was in Nur Sultan, the capital of Kazakhstan, and we met with several ambassadors, 5 or 6 ambassadors from various countries, to discuss this idea. And the idea was, since it was difficult to bring Afghan students to Europe or the United States, one, it was expensive. Secondly, due to immigration problems, issues, difficulties. So we suggested that why not to bring these students to Central Asian states, to Kazakhstan and other Central Asian states, and they study there, and various different bodies, international bodies, fund those programs. The Afghan ambassador and the embassy, they worked hard on that, and eventually the UNDP agreed to the proposal, and they funded the project, under which in 2019-20 50 female students came to Kazakhstan for undergraduate and postgraduate studies, and 50 female students went to Uzbekistan for the same. And the plan was to expand this year by year and bring more Afghan students to various Kazakh universities and Uzbek universities and maybe others. The German government, I heard at that time, was also interested and inspired by that, and and they plan to bring hundreds of Afghan students to Kazakhstan for further studies. Unfortunately, I left Kazakhstan. I went out of Kazakhstan, but then couldn't go back due to the COVID pandemic, and I'm still out of that, and I'm working here. But I'm keeping myself updated about that project. It's going on very successfully. I'm feel very satisfied, and it gives me, a sense of purpose, that at least what we thought about something, visualized something, and it materialized quite quickly. And many people, the Kazakh Ministry of Education, Kazakh Foreign Ministry, we're grateful to them, Presidential Administration of Kazakhstan, Afghan Embassy, the UNDP, all acted very well, the then Afghan government. So I hope that under the Taliban, that project will continue, and students from Afghanistan will go to Central Asian republics, especially to Kazakhstan, because it has a very developed education system, very good universities, and Taliban will open doors for their students, for their colleagues, for their young people to go to under these programs to Central Asia, to the Middle East, to Europe, to America, so that they know what is going on in the world. They know, they build bridges, and they, through argument and dialogue, they convince and persuade the world that their system and what they believe is good. Gun is not the solution, as we have seen that war or military means don't bring peace. 20 years war, 20 years of fighting in Afghanistan again ended by war and by gun. Therefore, it's very important that we use education, we encourage education. Education is the channel to transform mind, to transform people, and to transform societies. I thank you very much for listening and watching my talk. I would appreciate actually your feedback. And as I said, I said all these things maybe from the top of my head. It might seem to you saying is very simple solution, offering simple solution to a complex problem, but maybe you take it as a tip, and some of you can come up with better ideas, with more comprehensive ideas. I'll be personally very happy to be part of any such initiative anywhere in the world where I can be of any assistance using my whatever little expertise and experience has to facilitate any such efforts, be it in the United Kingdom, in the EU, in Central Asia, wherever. Thank you very much, and have a nice day.